Hello everybody, it is I, Lurgypai, and today I am back with devlog number 2. I didn't get a lot of the work that I was supposed to get done, and you probably won't see a lot of work. It doesn't look like a lot was done, but actually a lot was done. A lot of programming and behind-the-scenes stuff, at least. At least that's what I like to tell myself. Whether or not that's actually happening is up for debate. But I'm going to go over what we covered this week. So I altered the animation. If you couldn't tell at the end of last episode, I was not satisfied with the jumping animation, so I altered it and split it up. Beyond that, I also edited the camera. We edited some fancy camera things that we'll cover later. But we'll start with the animation. So, as far as the animation goes, I didn't like the momentum based. I spent the entire week making the momentum based, and I didn't like it. So I changed it and actually split it up. So I set the animation and split it into just upwards time and downwards time. So when you jump, it plays the first half, and when you start falling, when your y value is great enough, is big, above 0, so that you're going downwards. It runs the second half of the animation, and so I use that, and I personally like it a lot more. I find it a lot smoother. On top of that, from there, I actually took the animation, which was just a single jump animation that stopped halfway through, and I split it into 2 separate animations, leg up and leg down. And now I can use those animations for separate things. So I actually just reused the leg up animation completely if you go into the hover state or the dash state. And so whenever you hover or dash, as the footage shows, it reels the legs up just like you would if he jumped, which I think looks fine enough. I might change it later. For now, it's just a somewhat pleasant, at least somewhat pleasant placeholder to use. But yeah, that's how that looks right now. And the dash, it works just as well. And then once he finishes dashing or stops floating, he goes into walk mode. And if he's in the air, it will run the, and his velocity, he's falling, it'll run the second half of the animation just like it would in normal walk mode. So all that work last week was pretty much for nothing. I like this a lot more. I think it's a lot smoother because the animation is running at a constant frame FPS. I don't like varying FPS a lot. So I'm very content with this. He runs the animations run at the same FPS as his walking, which is I think it increments the frame every 4 game frames, so a fourth of 15 frames per second is what he's moving at. Someone remarked that the sped up animation during the last episode, which was during a sped up portion, looked really nice. We'll see. I actually might make the animation variable based on how fast you're moving, which I think would be interesting to implement. But that was the first thing we did this week. After that, we actually moved on and did the camera. So we did 2 things this week and didn't just work on legs the entire time. The camera was a whole lot of fun to work with. I really enjoyed how it turned out, and you'll see that later. I really like it. Unlike the legs, I'm very satisfied with it and proud of it. But we started with a very simple thing. Zooming in and out used to be relegated to the comma and period keys because they had the open and closing thingamajigs. I don't remember which one was zooming in and out. I kind of just randomly assigned, but I figured those keys would work just for temporary testing, and it no longer is. I moved them, completely removed the functionality with those 2 keys and switched it to the mouse wheel. I had to add some code to actually interact with the mouse wheel and do some stuff in my controller class that I had written. I'm not sure if I'm satisfied with that. I think it's coupling things that shouldn't be together. I think it's attaching things that shouldn't be friends. The controller and the mouse, I think I might want to make a thing to hold all of the mouse's information separate from the controller's information, but that's beside the point. So that wasn't that hard. It took a bit because I screwed up a few things. I don't remember what I screwed up, but I did screw up a few things initially on implementing it. But after a while, I had it all working properly, and I'm very proud. You have to hold shift in order to do it. So if you're holding shift and you scroll the mouse wheel towards you, like downwards, it zooms out and zooms in. It's pretty intuitive. Very proud of it. It scrolls the same every kind of like I don't know how to describe it, but it works well. Is what I'm getting at. After the mouse, we moved on to a more fun and interesting camera system, actually. Basically, zooming to where the mouse is, I guess, is one way to describe it. If you've ever played Terraria and gotten the scope item, and I think if you hold right-click while holding the scope, while you have the scope accessory, it zooms it, and you have a ranged weapon. So that kind of zoom, I guess, and then also the zooming that's by default accessible in Starbound, which, as you can see right here, I really like this zooming. I actually realized I don't really use it a lot in Starbound, but for an exploration-based game, which is what the goal of this is to be, I think it'll be used a lot more. And at least I like to think that. I spent a whole week working on it, so I hope people use it. But I'm very proud of my copycat job. As you can see, the Starbound camera, it doesn't like instantly follow where your mouse is. It kind of slow out, slow in. It accelerates from no movement towards moving really fast, and then slows down as it gets to where your camera is going to be. I didn't implement mine like that. Mine's just a slow in camera, meaning it will accelerate instantly and then slow down as it gets towards it, mostly because that was just easier and I'm lazy. I think it looks fine. I don't think there's any need for a slow out, but that comes down to how the camera was implemented. So initially, I was pretty sure I knew how to do this, and in the end I did. It was actually pretty simple. Basically, you take the player's position, right, and you take the mouse's position, and you find the point exactly halfway between those 2 points. And then you just set the center of the camera to that. It's that easy. And then when you move that point around, the center of the camera moves, and it moves to kind of show the camera and everything, which that took a lot of code. I screwed some stuff up, some calculations and stuff, so I ended up spending a lot more time on that than I needed to, especially since I immediately knew how to do it. But I ended up doing that, and I was satisfied initially with it. But as you can see, it actually snaps straight to where the thing is, which is jerky, actually. It's really jerky, and you don't really think it would be, but it really is, because it's always exactly halfway between. And so that's when you have to add the slow out, the slow deceleration to get to where you are, to kind of follow behind it a bit. And so what I ended up doing is making it so that the center point has its own anchor point. That's the anchor, and the center of the camera will constantly be updating to try and get to the anchor, or if you're not moving at all, it'll set itself on the anchor after you're close enough. It'll constantly be updating itself and moving itself towards the anchor, and so this way it'll kind of accelerate and lag behind. And while testing it, I found it actually a lot more helpful to graphically render and visualize this. So actually, here's some footage of this whole process of the successful and completed version of this camera working. So as you can see, there are 2 dots here. This one is the anchor point, and this dot is the actual camera center that's following behind it, right? And so as I move the anchor point around, the camera point will actually chase it around and follow it around. And if I don't move my mouse at all and just walk, it kind of lags behind because it's chasing it, but I'm moving, right? After that, there were just a few more things I had to add. I basically one, and that's recentering the camera. So I needed to make it so that if you want to actually recenter the camera... Oh! There were 2 things, actually. Recentering the camera and locking. Obviously, you don't want the camera to always follow the mouse, so I made it so that if you press Control, it will just store your current anchor point with respect to the player, and every update reset it based on where it is with respect to the player, and that way you can lock it like this and just move the mouse around however you want. And then from there, I added the thing that I was talking about, centering. If you hold Control for, I think it's 40 frames, which I don't remember how long. I don't remember if it's graphical frames or ticks. But if you hold it for a certain amount of time, certainly not like instantly, but less than a second, I think, it will relock the anchor point onto the center of your player so that you don't have to manually put it there, and it's just easier to recenter on where your player is for people that get annoyed and want to have it perfectly on the player. That's what that does. Overall, I'm very satisfied with this camera. Overall, I'm very satisfied with how this camera turned out. Here's, you can see without the red dots for visualizing, it just, I think it looks awesome. It works exactly how I want it to. You can recenter, you can lock, you can zoom in and out and all that stuff. Very satisfied with this camera. I've already started actually a little bit, just some of the boilerplate code for the biome system that I keep talking about. I make it sound fancy. It's not. It's just a way to store and modify data for biomes more efficiently, and generate their terrain more easily, so that I can use them better. I'll make 2. So that actually, some work on that will be done this next week. I also want to work on, man, I'm drawing a complete blank. what is it that I was going to work on? I want to work on, oh yeah, graphical stuff. So this is running, the whole game is running on top of SDL and OpenGL. So SDL handles all the input stuff and makes the window. OpenGL I'm doing by hand for the rendering and stuff. So I've had to make all the rendering for all this by hand, which has been a bit of a pain in some situations because I've never done code like this. But it's worked out, and I think it's a lot of fun to learn how to use code like this. Pardon me fiddling around with a piece of paper. And I think it's a lot of fun. So I've continued with it despite, having obvious, easier solutions just using SDL by itself or using SFML. I'm familiar with SFML, and just using SDL would probably be easier. But I like rendering by hand. And on top of that, I'm also going to be putting shaders over the top of this. One of the reasons I want to do this project is because for practice, I made this shader here, which I liked a lot. Just a point-based lighting and shadow casting shader, kind of like what's in Starbound. I like a lot of the things Starbound does visually. So I implemented this just for fun, and I want to actually add this over the top of the game. And of course, it won't always be like this. That would just be a pain, and the light will be casted in a direction. But when you go down to lower levels, it'll get darker, and you'll always have a light. I don't think I want to make it run out. Maybe. We'll see. That stuff's to be decided, but you'll have a light like that. And so I do want to implement more in-depth shading. Right now, the rendering system I have set up doesn't have any kind of handling for post-processing or other custom shaders besides just basic 2D image rendering shaders. And those definitely need to be implemented. I haven't thought a lot about it, so I don't really have any plans on it, but I'm definitely going to work on that at some time. I'm not sure if that's the next week or what. We'll see. I kind of just do whatever I want. But I want to focus on the game mechanics before I try and make it look pretty. So I'll try to focus on the biome stuff. But that's all I have for you. That's what next week looks like, is biome and graphics. And biome might mean some fancy stuff like biome-related plants or whatever. I don't know. I want to avoid... I guess I'm running out of things that don't need new graphics to work on. So I'm probably going to start working on new graphics and stuff, which I've kind of been avoiding, as you can see by these placeholder tiles and this one animation. But that's all, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope these are reasonably entertaining. I'll try and edit them to be fancy, but I'm trying to cut down on the amount of editing I do because I'm not the most entertained by it, and I want to actually be able to produce content and not get bored of producing content. So I'm working on that. But that's all for the fourth time. And I'll see you all later, and never forget that you are loved. Bye-bye.